It is currently the FIFA World Cup season, but that does not mean that I've completely forgotten about the UFC. No, that's not happening. In fact, earlier today we had big breaking news suggesting that Francis Ngannou versus Jon Jones is reportedly being targeted for UFC 285 on the 5th of March in Las Vegas for the heavyweight championship of the world. However, there is a slight little twist. Ngannou, as we all know, is currently injured. He is sidelined and underwent surgery recently, I believe. So the UFC also have a backup plan in mind that if Francis Ngannou is not fit by UFC 285, then the UFC will shift their focus to a potential fight between Jon Jones and heavyweight contender Curtis Blaydes. Now, in this video, of course, as you have guessed by the title, I will be doing an early prediction for the potential Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou fight, given the fact that that is the fight that everyone wants to see and that everyone have been wanting to see for quite some time in the UFC's heavyweight division. So without any further ado, let's just get straight into this video. So first and foremost, in the UFC's heavyweight division, the scene is currently something like this. We have the champion Francis Ngannou, who has not fought in the octagon, who has not stepped foot in the octagon since his win over Cyril Gane, his last title defense, of course. Of course, there were also other issues surrounding his contract situation, given that Ngannou had made claims suggesting he did not receive enough money. He has not been receiving a big payday. He needs more. He needs more than what he's receiving currently from the UFC, and he needs more of a lucrative contract, so to speak. So that, keeping all that aside, let's just shift our focus to solely to the fight between Ngannou and Jon Jones, what it could be and how things could possibly play out by UFC 285. So starting off with Jon Jones, the big issue with him right now is that he has not fought in the UFC for 3 years now, and by the time we get to UFC 285, it will be more than 3 years, in fact, that Jon Jones has not stepped foot inside the octagon. Whereas Francis Ngannou, his latest title defense was a very impressive one, so to speak, against Cyril Gane, whom he beat quite dominantly, I should say. If I don't know if that's the right term, but yeah, we saw a different version of Ngannou in that fight, using his wrestling, using his grappling, something that we did not think he actually had it in him, because he's more of a power hitter, more of a striker, and likes to rely on his power. But yeah, against Cyril Gane, he had to take a different approach. Putting all of that into perspective, UFC 285, Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou could be a very interesting fight. That could be a really interesting fight, because let's be honest, if this was a different timeline, if this was like 10 years ago or like 5 years ago, when Jon Jones was active, competing as the most dominant light heavyweight champion of all time, then this fight would have been a lot different, because back then you had Jon Jones, who was literally running through some of the best 205 pounders that the UFC had to offer. He literally beat Daniel Cormier twice, who is arguably, in my opinion, sorry to say to all the DC fans, but yes, the second greatest lightweight after Jon Jones, despite all the issues that Jones has had, despite all the drug test failures, despite all his personal life issues. I think Jon Jones, like, even if he was clean, even if he was clean of those charges, clean of those drug tests, I think he still would have beaten DC twice. Let's just be honest. As I was saying, if this was like 5 years ago, I think Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou would have been a one-sided fight. Despite all the power Francis Ngannou has in those hands, despite all the explosiveness, I think Jon Jones is well capable of dealing with someone of such power. We have seen it time and time again, how good he is as a wrestler, how good he is as a grappler, how good he is as a striker as well. Like, he is one of the best fighters to step foot in the UFC, one of the top fives of all time. Here comes the big issue for me. I think Jon Jones being inactive for 3 years in a row is going to be issue for him when he returns at UFC 285, if he returns at UFC 285. Because, 3 years of inactivity is first and foremost a very, not a very good sign, especially when you're returning in a title fight against a fighter of such dominance, of such power, like Francis Ngannou. All right, so now getting down to the second issue, which I think Jon Jones might face upon his return to the UFC, upon his return, or rather his debut at the heavyweight division, in the heavyweight division, is that Jon Jones has put on so much weight now. He is a much more of a bigger fighter. He has put on so much muscle mass for his heavyweight debut. So, will that sort of affect Jon Jones's performance upon his return in the heavyweight division at UFC 285? Because you see, Jon Jones has such a big frame now. He's literally so huge. So for him to go out there and make his return after 3 years against a fighter like Francis Ngannou, with so much muscle mass, so much weight, will that sort of cause a cardio issue for him? Will that sort of be an issue with his stamina? Because Jon Jones can go 5 rounds if he wants to. Like, we have seen him go 5 rounds so many times in the light heavyweight division. But with a bigger frame, he's expected to get slower. So will that be another issue for him? I think so. It might be, because especially because we don't know how Jon Jones will turn up in the heavyweight division. He has no idea, because he hasn't fought in 3 years. So once he steps in there with a fighter like Francis Ngannou, who, by the way, also has faced a lot of cardio issues. Let me remind you, like, we have seen Ngannou face cardio issues against Stipe Miocic, even in the fight against Cyril Gane. So maybe it could be a little 50-50 on that behalf. Will Jon Jones prefer returning to the octagon against one of the most explosive strikers in the UFC's heavyweight division? Will Jon Jones, with such a big frame, prefer stepping into the octagon with a striker who has all the knockout power in the world, can easily knock out any heavyweight he wants to? That obviously puts Jones in a risk of getting knocked out by someone like Ngannou, in my opinion. I think so. Jones could be in danger of getting a lot slower. But yeah, with Jon Jones, like, if Jones still maintains the same cardio, the same stamina that he did at 205, then it could be a long, long night for Francis Ngannou. Long night. Because could you expect a bigger version of Jon Jones with the same speed, same agility? That's literally going to be like Brock Lesnar fighting, because Brock Lesnar had that speed despite competing as a heavyweight. Now, getting down to the third factor that is in this situation, that the third man in this entire situation, this entire scenario, is of course Curtis Blaydes, who, in my opinion, very controversial call, but I think Curtis Blaydes would be the most favorite to win in a potential fight right now, in my opinion. I think against Jon Jones and against Francis Ngannou, definitely against Ngannou, and I think he has all what it takes to beat Jon Jones as well. I mean, technically speaking, it's not that big of a fight compared to Jones versus Ngannou. But yeah, Curtis Blaydes, I think the run that he's on lately, he has what it takes to beat Francis Ngannou. His wrestling is incredible, and Ngannou is going to struggle against a high-level wrestler slash grappler like Curtis Blaydes. Eventually, it all comes down to the fact that I hope we get to see Jon Jones by 2023. And with that being said, that's pretty much it. That's my early prediction slash quick take on Jon Jones and Francis Ngannou and the situation surrounding the heavyweight division, at the top of the heavyweight division. I just hope we get to see this fight. That's it. It's already like an year late. We should have seen this fight like right after Jones announced his move to heavyweight. Obviously, he needed to take his time, blah blah blah. But all that crap can be kept aside. Let's just focus on the fights. Let's just get this deal done. Let's have two proper heavyweights in there 2023. If you guys are watching this video, I would really appreciate if you hit that like button, so hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys next time around. Thanks for watching.